You're listening to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast. I'm your host, Nadine Bozeman. In this podcast, I'm sharing business systems and strategies specifically tailored to the bridal sewing industry so you can build your own modern and profitable bridal alterations business. Join me as I also get to chat with fellow seamstresses and share their personal success stories. I'm so glad you're here and that we can grow together in this unique trade. Hey friends, before we get into another episode, I wanted to share with you about a free private podcast series that we have available for you, all about the subject of branded fitting packages. So if you have ever considered charging for fittings or maybe adding a little bit of additional passive income to your average ticket, this would be a great free podcast series for you to explore. It also includes testimonials of bridal seamstresses who have added branded fitting packages to their own portfolio, and they share about their additional income that they've seen in the years since adding fitting packages. And we're talking about like $15,000 to $20,000 in revenue. So it's a big chunk of change. And I can confidently say that every bridal seamstress that has added branded fitting packages to their portfolio has seen this kind of exponential growth and benefit to their business. So I encourage you to sign up for that free podcast series, and it will hit your inbox as soon as you sign up. And you'll have all the tools that you need to create your own fitting packages and also put together a beautiful investment guide to share these services with your potential clients. So that link is in the show notes if you're interested in tuning in. And I'm really excited to learn what this could do for your business this year. Welcome back to another episode of Secrets of Bridal Seamstress. I am here with Christine Lindback, and she is the creative mind behind Sewing in the City and Lindy Lindy. And she has a really cool story of, well, she grew up in the Pacific Northwest and then moved to New York City. And now she's living this like dreamy, creative life over in Spain. And so there's really cool little nuggets to pull from your story. So thank you, Christine, so much for being with us today and inspiring our listeners of sewists. We have a lot to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me, Nadine. I'm so excited to chat.
Yeah. So how about we start by telling us what a day in the life of a sewist in Spain is like? You wake up, you look out the window at the beautiful city, you just make things. Let's talk about that.
If only it were that simple and that peaceful in reality.
Just like a movie, you know?
Yeah. So, well, I wake up, I have a dog, my sewing buddy. So we take him for a walk, get some coffee, and then I guess there's kind of like two types of days. I have one day where I have a girl that comes in and helps me with socials and stuff like that. And then other days where I'm kind of on my own.
Mhm.
But most of the time I am switching gears many, many times throughout the day between Sewing in the City, Lindy Lindy, cutting vintage linens, making a new pattern, posting on socials, creating content, creating YouTube videos, answering emails, all the things, cleaning.
But it sounds like fun stuff. Yeah. It sounds like very fun things. Like, you know, like you're playing with the vintage stuff and then you're making the new patterns. And so how about you tell us a little bit of what Sewing in the City is and then what Lindy Lindy is? Because they're two really different brands that you're behind. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so Sewing in the City was the first thing that I created, and I actually started it in 2015. I was living in New York, working in fashion, and I've been sewing since I was like 4 or 5 years old, like really, really little.
Wow.
And so even when I was in New York, I was making clothes that I couldn't afford, you know, how we all do.
Right.
And working in fashion, I was exposed to stuff. And so like I really wanted the expensive stuff. So I just ended up making it. And then I was blogging about it, just, you know, casually kind of a thing. But I named it Sewing and the City because, you know, I was in New York and all that. And so in 2019, when I had left my corporate job, moved to Spain, and then started Sewing in the City, how do you say, like more seriously, really putting more effort into it.
Because did you have something like click where you realized this potentially could be something that led you to want to put more intentional thought, or were you just kind of on a whim, or was there a moment when you're like, oh, this could be like a career?
Yeah, it wasn't, I guess it was a moment. So when I left my corporate job working in fashion, I I was looking for something that I could do anywhere because I knew I knew I wanted to eventually leave New York. And so I started building websites for people because I was blogging. So I knew my way around WordPress and tech. So that was the bridge that then I was building all of these sites for other people. And literally one day it did click. I was like, why am I not doing this for myself?
Wow.
And so that's when I decided to put more focus back in sewing in the city. I literally took myself on as a client. So because it's like, when are you going to have time, right?
Right,
So
right.
I
Create those
like
boundaries. Yeah.
yeah, so that I could still make money, while I was testing it. I was still building stuff for other people, but I was working on sewing in the city, as if a couple of hours a week. And I launched a course. That was the first thing that I did. So now I have a mix of online courses for people like learning to sew or learning like lingerie, stuff like that. And then I also have digital sewing patterns that you can buy, download, print at home, and then make your own garment. And I also have physical patterns that I sell in stores, like sewing and craft stores. So that's kind of the gist of sewing in the city. I have a YouTube channel as well, and mostly Instagram and YouTube is kind of where I am, where I live.
Yeah. And then
So,
where did Lindy Lindy come from then?
yeah, okay. So Lindy Lindy came really organically from when I was living in Spain. I mean, really always I've loved vintage linens. Going to like the antique mall in Tacoma, different estate sales. I would pick up
Yeah.
pillowcases as
Yeah.
a little kid. So I've always kind of had the eye for that. I actually even went to Alabama to study with Martha Pullen
Oh my
back in the
goodness.
90s.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This story keeps getting better and better.
Oh my gosh. So, but I studied French sewing. So like I kind of knew embroidery and laces and French sewing. So one day I was just wandering through an antique market here in Spain, and I started seeing all these beautiful vintage linens. Again, like the pillowcases, but in all of these other pieces, and I just couldn't leave them behind. And so I started bringing them home with me.
The collection began. Yeah. We know how that goes.
Like, yes, that's exactly how it went. But then I started with sewing in the city. I started experimenting with them. Like, this is one of my patterns.
I was going to say, I love what you're wearing.
Yeah, and it's a vintage linen. It's like a tablecloth I was able to repurpose. So I started just like kind of experimenting with stuff. And then it eventually I kind of started to get the idea that, oh, this would be amazing loungewear, sleepwear. Always had a little bit of a thing for loungewear and lingerie. Whole course on it was sewing in the city, and it's just something that I've always loved.
Yeah.
And so I just started making robes and little pajama sets out of these beautiful, soft vintage linens. And that's how Lindy Lindy came about.
I love it because it's like those are such fun little projects, you know what I mean? And there wasn't pressure to like pump out a certain design or like fit the mold. It's like you just made what you already enjoyed making with like your love of vintage. So that's the coolest way to start a business is like combining things you already enjoy.
Yeah. And I use all my patterns as well. So it's like I already have these assets, the patterns are like our business assets and already have gone through fitting and testing and all of that.
Right.
So it made sense to be able to leverage them in other ways. So
yeah. So we'll be linking both of these accounts because Lindy Lindy is just I love that feed. It's like so pretty and fun. And I'm like, I just want to go to all the estate sales. You know what I mean? Like getting inspired because I remember recently there was like a bedspread that you were working with. Was it a bedspread or was it a tablecloth?
Yeah, it could be either. Yeah.
I'm like, which one was sticking out in my mind? So going back to when you were 5 years old, who was the sewing teacher back then? Was it a grandma? Was it your mom? Who was it?
Yeah, well, my mom was sewing. She, she had a machine in the living room and all of that. But she kind of just let me go. And I was making Cabbage Patch doll outfits.
So
And my grandmother also sewed. So I had a couple different influences in there.
I
have
love
some of
to
my
hear how
connections.
oftentimes it is like it's somebody in our household, it's somebody in our family. It's nothing really like official. Like very few people that I've interviewed have learned to sew through lessons. Like the first introduction has always been creative play. And then it's like, oh, what can I do with this? You know what I mean? And so I just think it's so cool to hear like it's always a very personal connection point and like fun memories. And then seeing people kind of light up when they talk about like the Cabbage Patch doll outfits or whatever, you know what I mean? And I remember like probably my earliest memory with fabric is my mom must have picked up something at a garage sale. We were like big garage sale family. My childhood was on the East Coast, and so they were called yard sales back there. And then when we moved to
Yeah.
Washington, they were garage sales. So we got like this bag of squares of fabric, and thinking now in my adult mind, it was gross. And I remember the musky smell that it was just ugly scraps, but I couldn't stop playing with them. And somebody, I think it was my mom, who taught me how to just sew them as like a quilt strip, you know what I mean? And like if you put right
Yeah.
sides together, what happens when you sew things right sides together? So
Yeah.
I must have been like 7, and that's all I just wanted to do is just put squares together, you know? And like I don't even know if I finished anything. I don't think I did, but we always have those memories, like the first like little glimmers of like, oh, this is fun and this could be something cool. Like I could put something together, you know? So
Yeah.
for you, it's
Yeah.
your doll outfits.
Yeah, I remember like staying in the summer, I was allowed to stay up as late as I wanted to.
Hmm.
And I can remember like my dad was always the last one. He was like stayed up a little later than my mom. And
Hmm.
he would go to bed. And I can remember a couple of times where he was like, "Are you gonna go to bed?" Because I just was like sewing, 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 sewing.
That is so cute. Little sewing nerds. And then,
Yeah,
okay, this
totally.
is really embarrassing, but our local county fair would have a Homemaker of the Year award. And I was like,
Oh,
I think I was like 15, and I was like, I'm gonna win this award. And like, there were all these different home arts categories, you know, like baking and preserves and crocheting and knitting and quilting. And so I had all the needle arts represented, and I think I did like dried vegetables or something. I did some kind of like dehydrated veggies because I really wanted this award. So I got like a dehydrator and all the things. I didn't win because I had an old machine. And so like the stitching on my quilt was like not great. And I remember like one of the judges called me and she was like, we just want to let you know you need to get a new machine, but you need to keep sewing because we can't give you this award because of the stitches. But what machine do you have? And this is what you should get. And it was just, I don't know. Yeah, it was just so sweet. But I was like such a dork because I really wanted that Homemaker of the Year award when I was 15 years old. So when did you realize that you wanted to pursue like sewing? Because what were you doing? What was your day job before you got to New York City? So before you started
yeah.
blogging and like creating websites, like how did you get to that point? And then was sewing just your fun outlet?
Yeah, so I think that as a kid I would have I would have gone straight into doing something with my sewing, but
Yeah.
like the message that I was getting, maybe from my parents, maybe just from society in general, was like you can't make money from your hobby.
Mm-hmm.
That was very much so like I never even really considered it.
Yeah.
And but so I went to work in retail stores. I kind of
So
see
is
almost
retail, that was the side of fashion? Because I'm like, were you like designing or were you okay? So retail, yeah,
yeah.
it can be rough.
So growing up in Seattle, there wasn't a whole lot, but I started working at Nordstrom
Hmm.
sales floor selling women's clothes. And
Hmm. Were
at least
you a
that,
personal
that got me.
stylist? Were you a Nordstrom personal stylist? Because that would be a fun job.
No, yeah, that would be really stressful, I think. But yeah, I was just selling. And then eventually I moved up Fifth Avenue to Escada, which is no
Hmm.
longer there, but
Right.
and got into management and running the stores. So I moved to California first with a promotion to take on more responsibility, and then finally to New York.
Wow.
Um,
Okay. So this took,
yeah,
went all over. So
went
travel was
all
always
over.
in your blood. You were always open to that.
Yeah, yeah, I think my parents like kind of, allowed me to follow what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I had, somehow had the courage to make those jumps, and each time it gets a little easier.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
um,
amazing. What was
yeah.
your first project maybe like as a teenager or even in college, or maybe this was already once you were like in the retail space, that you were your first project that you were so proud of, that you were like,
Mm.
yes, I made this and it looks so good.
Oh gosh. I think it was probably a christening gown that I made when I must have been like 14, 15.
Oh,
And
wow.
I used the shark's tooth technique. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know that where you like fold under and you make like little triangles all along?
No. Is it on
Right.
your YouTube channel? Because I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, so it's a technique. It's like an old French sewing technique, and you do like these little triangles. So I did triangles on the yoke and all along the hem of the christening gown.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. Yeah, I would love to see
um,
that on your YouTube channel if you could share that.
yeah.
Share some
Oh,
of
maybe.
these skills.
Yeah,
Hmm.
maybe I did do an episode once where because it's still at my parents' house, and I think I went into the closet, grabbed a bunch of the things that I had made, and kind of shared them. So maybe it is on
Hmm.
my channel.
Yeah.
So
We'll have to like take a peek back and see what we can find
yeah,
from what you learned in Alabama and what you can share us from that from that.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Sewing in the City came first, and then Lindy Lindy became this like the kind of culmination of your patterns and then also creative expression. So do you find that you're connecting more with your clientele or your followers through Sewing in the City or Lindy Lindy? Where's that? Which one has more of a stronger connection point?
Yeah, I think the definitely the sewing community is so strong, sewing in the city. And
Hmm.
I think it's because I've been doing it longer. I think
Yeah.
that there's so many more relationships. I just enjoy it so much.
Yeah.
The seeing what everyone's making and new fabrics and patterns and supporting each other. It's really such a cool community.
Yeah. So
It's a
when you are switching gears into selling like pre-made, or is Lindy Lindy like made to order, or are they pre-made?
I do a little of both.
A
I
little
do
both.
some pre-made and then some made to order just
Yeah. So
for
how did
size.
you switch over to like that side of like a retail? Well, you have that retail experience, so that may have helped. But it's like you went from being a sewing educator and pattern producer to now selling tangible items. Like from a business mindset, what things had to switch on your end to like make that just as successful?
Yeah, I mean,
Because it's like
it is
totally different skill set.
totally different. Yeah, and physical products are like a
Yes.
whole animal in itself.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it's just been like one step at a time, like thinking things a little bit through. Next step, like, okay, first I needed to find someone to help me sew stuff because
Hmm.
I knew, I'm at capacity, like I can't make all
Yeah.
the pieces.
We
So
heard your daily list at the beginning of the episode of like what an average day looks like. So it is full, and I can understand why you'd need help. So,
yeah, yeah. I cut everything because that's kind of the tricky part is like placing the
mhm,
design and all of that. So I
mhm,
cut and then I pass things off to a couple different sewists, all local, all, really talented and amazing women.
mhm,
Um, so that was the next step. Like, okay, how do I figure out this process and how does that whole system work? And
mhm,
then figuring out, okay, how am I gonna package this? And then how am I gonna send this and building the website.
mhm.
So
And
it's
I'm thinking,
been
how are you getting the word out? Or did you just already have such a community from Sewing in the City that they were ready to buy your products?
yeah, I
You
did start
find,
a wait list. So I kind of started growing it and promoting it as I was getting ready to launch.
mhm,
Definitely helped a lot. I had, people that bought right away, which was
that's
just,
awesome.
it was that little bit of motivation that I needed just to say, okay, this is like proof of concept, like,
Mhm.
okay, there's something here.
Yeah. I think we
And
all need that. We need that like little like instant win to feel like, okay, this is gonna work. Like people want my
yeah,
stuff. You know what I mean? Before you put too much like energy or emotion into it, you need to like have a little assurance before planning your whole life around it. So I get that.
and- yeah, yeah, it's so true. And I mean, it is like whenever we do these things, it's like taking a jump into the unknown. Like you don't
Mhm.
know if what is what's going to happen with it. So I got that, little bit of reassurance. And then I've just been building. send a weekly email, and I'm normally trying to launch something new every week. So whether
Oh,
it's a new, yeah, like one new piece or a short,
one a week? That is like very ambitious. Wow. And you're acting
well,
like it's no big deal. That's a big
yeah,
deal.
well,
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I suppose sometimes though, I will say disclaimer, sometimes all I'm doing is listing a new made to order piece. So
Mhm.
I'll photograph the fabric and show all the details, and then you can choose your size and the style that you'd like. So
Okay.
sometimes that's what I'm doing every week,
Still, that
even
is so
something.
impressive. And I love how you're giving yourself the freedom of like, it could be this or it could be this, but you're giving yourself some kind of like deadline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I stick to it most of the time. Like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna kill myself if I can't do something, a week or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think also I've learned with sewing in the city, the consistency is really important. And
Hmm.
people it kind of builds trust with people in a subtle way, because they're like, you're showing up every day, every week in their inbox or in their YouTube feed or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I try to stay as consistent as humanly possible,
Right,
but
right.
giving myself some grace as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes. Do you have a favorite item that you love to make? One of your made to order
Mm,
items?
yeah, I just made kind of a new style. It's a little slip, and I did some embroidery or French lace insets on it,
Oh, cute.
and it's my current favorite. And I
Special.
think
I
also
can't wait to join your email list now because I want to see these things, like your little weekly
yeah,
announcements. So, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I want to see your embroidery projects and how cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to pick favorites, I think, but it's like whatever's the newest is usually where my attention is. So,
Yeah. Where you just want to spend all your time is like the newest
totally.
solution. Yeah. What helps
Yeah.
you stay motivated or what helps you keep things like fresh and new? Like in both capacities with sewing in the city, like consistently creating new content, and then also thinking outside the box with Lindy Lindy of like how to create new beautiful pieces and, incorporate your love of embroidery in different ways. So what keeps you going fresh, I guess?
It's such a good question. I mean, I know it's kind of cliche, but taking a day off, it really, really helps. It's
Some listeners are gonna be like, "What? A day off
yeah,
in bridal
I
season?" Yes, though. Oh my
just,
goodness. Let's park on
yeah.
this subject. Yeah.
Yes, especially when it's super busy like that. Or when I'm in like a season of creation, I
Hmm.
need that time away. And sometimes it's almost impossible to pull ourselves away from, you're like literally in it.
Hmm.
But every time I pull myself away just for a day and not even go into the sewing room, I always will come up with an idea while I'm doing something else, or just wake up feeling like, refreshed. So definitely a break. And then filling my eyes with stuff. Like, I
Hmm.
love magazines. I'm still like still that I guess it's old school now to be into magazines because everything's online. I love a magazine.
Yeah, good. Like you can flip through nice, thick, glossy pages. Yes.
Yes, tear
Mhm.
stuff out, and yeah.
That's really
So
cool.
anything visual is inspiring. Even
Hmm.
on the street, I love just walking around and seeing what people are wearing. I probably look like that weird girl that stares at people because I'm like looking at some like pleated detail on their dress, but
How is that made? I'm not
yeah,
staring at you. I'm staring at your dress in not a weird
exactly.
way. So that may be like your best kept secret as a creative entrepreneur is like giving yourself time off. And for some people, that is a novelty. Like, we kind of live in a society that tells us that you just have to keep going even on your off days, be on social media or just be pumping out content or creating or being productive. And have you ever read anything by Kate Northrup or have you
Oh yeah,
I love Kate Northrup?
yeah,
So
yeah.
she
That's
has a book
totally the
called
vibe.
Do Less. Yeah. So for listeners who haven't heard of this yet, Kate Northrup has an excellent book called Do Less, and it's all about like leaning into the seasons like in nature and then like our bodies cycles and giving ourselves that gift of rest and rejuvenation and just time to like absorb, yeah, taking in like the rest around us or giving ourselves time to just step back and also leaning into if you don't feel inspired to do something or if you feel tired, it's probably because you are tired and you need a break. Like just not
Mhm.
overthink it. But so those kind of things are coming to mind. And it's such a like you said, it's a simple thing, but I think a lot of us just look up, oh, I don't need the time off. For our listeners, most of our listeners are bridal seamstresses. And so we have a very definite wedding season that we're sewing through. And so I've started a week on, week off schedule for myself. And I did that, I think I started like 2 years ago. And it was totally a game changer because I realized how that constant like sewing for the deadline was like totally messing with me. And I wanted time to catch up on my work and then also have time to like, once I was done with the work, I wanted to like sit home and like sit in my backyard or just, and having that time off, honestly, having the time off away from like clients, like not being client facing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having a week where I know like I'll be in my sweats or whatever, just sewing by myself is like a gift. you know? And it's like that is time off in itself too. But it has definitely changed my productivity because then when it comes back to being with clients again on, my on week, I'm like, oh yay, I get to be with brides. Like I'm rejuvenated and refreshed and that balance is there. So listeners, you got both of us telling you to take some time off for rest.
One of the things that's helped is I realized I just needed to trust myself. Like I know that I'm always going to get everything done. Like
Mhm.
that we're all like conscientious people. And so to trust myself enough to say like I know if I don't feel like motivated in this moment or these couple of hours, it's okay to let myself rest because I trust that I'm going to get the job done or I'm going
Mhm.
to do a good job or whatever it is that I'm
Mhm.
that pressure on.
Right.
Like and so that allows me to just move with the rhythm.
Right. Oh, move with the rhythm. I love that. Yeah. What are your plans for the next few seasons? Are you going to like hang out in Spain for a few more years or we can
Yeah,
just stick to
definitely,
like two,
definitely.
3 year plan?
Yeah, definitely in Spain. It's my home now. So continuing to, yeah, same. I think one of the things I'm really excited about with Lindy Lindy is a stationery line that is coming at in the first of the year.
Oh my goodness,
Um,
what is that going to look like?
inspired by vintage embroidery. So taking some of the gorgeous designs from the textiles that I have
Hmm.
and interpreting them into stationery
Oh,
for
that
weddings.
sounds beautiful.
So yeah.
My goodness, that sounds amazing. Okay, well,
Yeah.
give me a call when that is up and running because I will spread the news far and wide in the wedding community. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
How
Cool.
cool. I
I
never would
know.
have thought of like paper.
I know. I didn't either. And I just kind of serendipitously have a friend that she does like print on demand stuff.
Hmm.
So she kind of started filling me in on how it works and it just kind of put two and two together. And so I think it's a really fun extension.
Yeah.
So
Wow, that
yeah.
is really exciting. Well, we'll be on the lookout for that. And then tell listeners where they could find you to like follow along with your YouTube lessons or maybe get some inspiration for French embroidery. Where can we find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram and YouTube, I'm at Sewing and the City. And then
Not to be confused with Sex in the City, right? Or was
exactly.
it now I'm like, is it Sex in the City or Sex and the City? It's in, right?
It's and
Oh my goodness.
I know, isn't
They're
that
both
funny?
and because I'm like, well, some people might get confused because it's in, but it's and okay. Sewing in the
And
City.
yeah, yeah, is it Sewing and the City? And then Lindy Lindy is I'm on Instagram, it's at lindylindy.shop. And Lindy Lindy is a play on my last name. So
That's so
that's
cute.
how kind of a nickname. So
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so before
yeah.
we wrap up, I have a couple questions that have nothing to do with sewing, and it's just kind
Okay.
of fun to hear, yeah, what your personality, how your personality would speak to this. So let's start with
Okay.
what would a perfect weekend include for you? Like a perfect, or maybe just a perfect Saturday if you want to stick to one day.
Yeah. I mean, I love my Saturdays now. I love, love, love them. So I go to the market in the morning. So I walk my dog, get a good coffee, then go to the market
Mhm.
for fabrics. And then usually I'll come back home and I'll sew for that, like the afternoon, and then grab dinner with my boyfriend and kind of wander around the city. And
Where did
that's
you
a
meet your
pretty good
boyfriend? Oh,
Saturday.
I want to know about the boyfriend. Where did you meet him? Did you meet him in Spain?
Yeah, yep. He's
Oh, beautiful.
Spanish.
This is
So
getting more and more like Eat, Pray, Love with every moment. Oh my goodness. Okay.
yeah, he's like born and raised in Spain. He's about
Wow.
as Spanish as you could possibly get.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Um,
How long have you been together?
just over a year.
Oh,
So, and
congratulations.
he's a third generation florist. So his family's grandparents started, doing
Yeah.
flower business. And so he kind of has a connection with weddings as well,
Yes.
which
Oh
is
my gosh, that
really,
is so
really
cool.
neat.
And you both have that like creative, like common thread, but in different
Yeah,
aspects. I love that. Oh,
totally.
that is so cool. That does sound
Yeah.
like the perfect Saturday. We all need to have a little sabbatical overseas.
Yeah.
That would be good for all of us, probably. And I love how sewing was still part of your perfect day. You were like, well, I'd spend the day sewing and then get dinner.
Yeah, I know it's so funny,
That
but
probably
Saturdays
leaves
are
your,
just
yeah,
so
doing the right
nice
thing
and
with your life.
calm and yeah.
If you weren't a sewing entrepreneur, what would your career choice be?
Yeah,
If you weren't doing what you did now, like, and
yeah,
I like to say like in an alternate universe, if like sewing and I guess stationery weren't on your radar, what would you be doing?
yeah. I always said that if teaching paid a little bit better, I probably would have been a teacher. Like straight out of
Mhm.
college, I probably would have because I just loved I had so many great teachers in my life.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I guess I kind of am a teacher
Yeah,
in some days, but I think I probably would have really been like a
like a
true teacher.
traditional classroom teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's still time, so you can, but
Yeah. I don't know.
so
I
I
don't know.
taught, yeah, I was a middle school choir teacher for 9 years, and the pay was definitely part of that decision to leave. And I'm still teaching, but just in a different aspect. You know what I mean? So it just kind of,
Totally.
I'm still using the skills that I learned in the classroom to teach, but it's obviously totally, totally different and a lot more enjoyable. But I really did enjoy teaching kids. Like, there was a reason why I lasted 9 years because part of it that I loved so much. But then there's some other aspects where I was like, I could do without this in my life. So
Yeah. I'm sure it's not an easy job every day
yeah,
to
yeah.
yeah.
I definitely have a more fun life now. So made the right
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
All right.
I think
Well,
I
I'm
do.
so excited to get your message out and to introduce our listeners to Sewing in the City and then also Lindy Lindy if they want to, because I'm excited to get on that. Like I said, your weekly newsletter so I can see what you're putting out each week. I can snag some of your embroidery.
Yeah. Yes, yes,
All right, so
yes.
check out some inspiration, some embroidery tips. If you want some fresh ideas of what to create, then please head to Sewing in the City on YouTube and look up Lindy Lindy for some vintage inspo. All right, thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Nadine.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And if you're feeling really generous, leave a review. Thanks, everyone.